Last evening and past midnight Indian Standard Time, President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin met in Alaska to discuss peace for Ukraine. But what transpired was, now you listen to President Trump himself when he addressed the press after meeting Putin.
That we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call.
So this is what he had to say. There is no deal until there is a deal. So that means no ceasefire as of now, and Ukraine and even Russia are not going to see peace in the immediate future. It might come in some time, but not immediately. So what transpired at Alaska? Very interestingly, there were a few non-participants but yet participants who were watching this summit very closely, the European Union and the Ukraine. Now the next question which you will have in your mind as to why were they watching this summit very anxiously, apart from the fact that they wanted peace. Everybody wants peace at the end of the day. But I'll come to that later. What appeared after the meeting was very evident that President Trump looked very tired. You see this picture and understand that he does look tired. Now he's got reasons to be tired because he must have come to this summit with a lot of expectations. He's been building upon the summit. He's been arm twisting Putin with the fact that he's pressurizing India by putting sanctions and secondary sanctions on India so that it is not able to buy oil from Russia and basically not finance, as he calls it, the Russian invasion. That he's not doing anything to China for buying more oil and European Union for buying more gas is besides the point for the time being. So it did look tired. Maybe it was also the fact that during his election campaign, he was very categorical about the fact that he will get peace done in Ukraine before he entered White House. That later shifted to he getting the peace deal done within 24 hours of moving into White House. The fact that it's been more than 7 months since he entered White House and Russia and Ukraine have been fighting each other during all this time will obviously make somebody tired because he has faltered where he had basically promised to deliver. He might be claiming ceasefire between Laos and Thailand and something also on India and Pakistan, which obviously India has rejected and rightly so. So this is going to make him tired. And what happened afterwards? There was a very interesting aspect which I observed during the meeting was the fact that the Americans, I am not very sure as to why did they did that. They tried to do psychological operations with Vladimir Putin. Now I have a series of videos which I have combined which you like to see. The B-2 bombers flying over the tarmac where Trump had received Putin as a show of strength, I would say. Then the cavalcade of Putin passing by the F-22 bombers lined up along with attack helicopters. They're not just symbolic. The idea was to basically convey a message of strength, which Trump usually claims peace from strength. But that was not all. The American media was very hostile and it asked questions, very uncomfortable and very undiplomatic questions like,
Mr. Putin, did you underestimate Ukraine? President Putin, will you stop killing civilians?
when will you stop killing civilians, Mr. Putin? Now that is generally not how you address foreign dignitaries, there is a certain protocol for the media also to follow. But that was all part of psyops. Now, if you think that only the military and media were involved in this psyops, then you are mistaken. Marco Rubio, the National Security Advisor, and the Secretary of State, and a very seasoned hand at diplomacy, somebody who's seen diplomacy for a very long time. Now, he entered the room and apparently he did not recognize President Putin until President Trump basically asked him to do so. So this is all part of psyops. But it is my feeling, it is my observation that the Americans were trying this with a very wrong person. Now, Putin has been, he was an ex-KGB operative, so he knows the tricks of the trade and a bit more also. He's seen the Soviet Union disintegrate, so obviously he's a toughened man, he's a very tough man. And then I saw his interview with Tucker Carlson, which I advise that people must see to understand what Putin basically, the sort of person Putin is. Now, I found him to be very nationalistic. He takes great pride in the history, culture and civilization of Russia. And as per my observations, such a person is a very hard nut to crack. Now, I really don't understand as to why the Americans tried to do that. Now, I'll come back to something which I mentioned at the start of the video as to why the European Union and Ukraine must be feeling relieved after the, I would say, the non-result out of this summit, no deal until a deal. So that sort of a thing, because for the simple reason that this is one of the very rare and bizarre situation where one of the parties in the conflict, that is Ukraine, was not even present at the negotiating table, at the discussion table. Now this we have seen during the First World War and the Second World War, but there was the case of being a victor and somebody who had lost. So Germany was not there in both the conferences, the Versailles. It was imposed, the treaties were imposed on Germans. So this time around, Ukraine not being there was very surprising. And the European Union, I mean, they have been saying this from the very outset, that this involves, the Russian invasion of Ukraine involves the security of Europe. So for them being left out of this conference must have been a bit galling, a bit insulting, so as to say. But they were not there. So they must have heaved a sigh of relief that Trump, who's known for his different diplomatic ways, did not promise something on their behalf which would have been very difficult to fulfill later on. And Europe, we have been seeing, has been on the decline. The European Union, recently they entered into a trade deal which is an absolutely one-sided deal with the United States, wherein the United States will be imposing 15% tariff on items coming into the United States from the EU, which in turn will impose 0% tariff. The Europeans are supposed to be buying $750 billion worth of energy from the United States, staggered over a period of 3 years, when they could have gotten Russian energy at a much cheaper rate. And they have committed to buying billions of dollars worth of weapons from United States, which you must remember has been pressurizing the NATO countries, most of which belong to the EU, to raise their defense spendings. So obviously once they raise their defense spendings and then they get to buy the same weapons from the United States. So this is a win-win for the United States military-industrial complex. So the Europeans must have been very apprehensive of the result which would have come out of this summit. Now there are times that people who say that Europe has become the vassal state to the United States. Now this is something which is a very serious, it's got very profound implications if it turns out to be true. And then the question of India. Obviously, all of us are more concerned about what happens to India, and the manner in which the Trump administration has suddenly become very hostile to India, imposed 25% tariff, then 25% more secondary tariffs, and then the talk of imposing even more secondary tariffs just to ensure that Russia stops this war. Now, this is beyond bizarre, I would say. There are times, if you don't really follow politics and geopolitics, there are times when you will feel that India is the country which has invaded Ukraine, or it could be invading, say, Taiwan, or disturbing the situation in South China Sea. Because China, there are no sanctions imposed on China. I mean, apart from the initial tariffs, there are no secondary tariffs, no sanctions, and they keep on postponing it, suspending and postponing it, just because maybe China has got more muscle up its sleeve, so nothing happens to China. And the EU, which buys so much gas, but there's no muscle twisting for the EU also. And Trump is very clear in that accord that basically he's arm twisting India because it is financing the Russian war in Ukraine. And this anomaly has not been able to explain when somebody has put this question before him. But that is how might is right sort of a way. But my own thing is that this goes beyond Russia financing its war by buying oil. It has also got something to do with Sindoor. Now something happened, something very strange has happened after Sindoor, and my hunch is, my idea is, from what I gather from different sources, is that India did do something which has hurt American interest in Pakistan, and this goes beyond hurting Pakistan, because the US interests in Pakistan have been there for a very long time. But this is something much more personal for the Americans and not geopolitics only. It would not be fair enough for me to pass an observation or say something very categorically until the truth is out in the public domain. So we better watch out as to what is going on. And finally, before ending, President Putin has offered a next summit in Moscow, which I'm sure Trump will be going to. And by the way, this fight between Russia and Ukraine goes on in the meanwhile, with the Russian military on the ascendance. It's sure to capture more territory, and the bargaining power is going to be much more next time around. As remember, in February, when Trump met President Zelensky of Ukraine, the thing he said that Ukraine has no cards. He repeated that. You've got no cards. Now, the interesting thing to watch out during the next summit in Moscow as to who has got the cards with him. As of now, it seems by the look out from the body language of both the president that maybe Putin has got a few more cards up his sleeve. But we'll watch this space and watch out for what happens. Thank you and Jai Hind.